There exists a murky territory within romantic connections, an emotional no man's land where countless women find themselves caught. This is the realm of the almost relationship, the undefined space, the perpetual questioning. You share time with a man, the chemistry feels genuine, the experiences together are meaningful, yet nothing seems to progress forward. There's no label, no clear indication of a couple's identity, and whenever you attempt to discuss what lies ahead, you sense him constructing barriers, witness him becoming elusive, hear him offering justifications like, and there you remain, stationed in an emotional waiting room, pouring your energy and affection into a storyline without a heading, constantly afraid that at any given moment, he might simply determine that this journey has reached its conclusion. If you've grown weary of the uncertainty, if your spirit craves the confidence and stability that comes with genuine commitment, I need you to understand that you don't have to settle for being a temporary choice. The issue isn't your longing for something more permanent, but rather the approach you've been using to achieve it. You've been attempting to persuade him to commit, when the real key lies in becoming the kind of woman with whom a man feels that commitment isn't a surrender of his independence, but rather the greatest triumph he could achieve. Today I won't give you tactics to apply pressure. I'll reveal the secret that will make him stop hesitating and feel an uncontrollable urge to request a serious commitment from you. Throughout this journey of 6 revelations, we'll uncover why your discussions about what's ahead are causing him to retreat. I'll explain the principle of future investment and why a man only commits to something he's already fought for. I'll provide you with practical strategies to create a void he feels compelled to fill and to become his sanctuary of tranquility. And then comes the major perspective shift. I'll teach you how to make him visualize an empty future without your presence. Finally, you'll witness how this transformation naturally leads him to become the one urgently asking you to be the central figure in his tomorrow. This isn't a manual for trapping a man. It's a blueprint for becoming a woman so self-possessed and so valuable that commitment becomes the only logical choice for a man who refuses to lose you. So, if you're prepared to stop being the eternal, almost something, and start being the final destination, make your decision. Ready to become his future. Let's begin. We're going to start by illuminating the minefield you've probably been walking through without realizing it. It's the minefield of future-oriented conversations. When you sense the relationship is stuck in ambiguity, your logical and natural impulse is to seek clarity. You want to know where this is heading. So you gather your courage, find what seems like the right moment, and ask the question in one way or another. What are we? Do you see a future for us? What are your intentions? And in 99% of cases, his reaction resembles someone who's just touched a high-voltage wire. He becomes defensive, evasive, uncomfortable, gives you vague responses, accuses you of applying pressure, or simply starts creating distance in the following days. And you're left confused and hurt, thinking the problem is his fear of commitment. But here's the first revelation you need to grasp. Often it's not an allergy to commitment itself. It's an allergy to the energy from which the commitment is being presented. When you initiate this conversation, especially if it stems from your own anxiety and insecurity, he doesn't hear an invitation to build a future together. What his masculine psyche hears at a very deep level is a threat to his freedom and a test of his capability. Let's consider the psychology behind his reaction. For many men, the concept of future and commitment carries immense pressure. The pressure to provide, to get things right, to not fail. When you ask him, "Do you see a future with me?" his mind doesn't visualize a romantic scene. Often he visualizes a list of responsibilities and expectations he fears he won't be able to fulfill. Your question, though asked from a place of love, is interpreted by his ego as a surprise test he hasn't prepared for, and his instinctive reaction to the fear of failing that test is to avoid it at all costs. Furthermore, and this is crucial, masculine energy values above all else the sensation of choice, of being the one who takes initiative, who conquers. When you present the conversation about commitment, you're stealing from him the opportunity to reach that conclusion on his own. He feels you're leading him to a destination he perhaps wanted to reach, but at his own pace and by his own path. Your question feels like a forced shortcut, as if you were taking the steering wheel away from him, and his autonomy instinct rebels. Imagine the story of a woman we'll call Laura. She'd been with a man she adored for 6 months. One day, Feeling the need for clarity, she prepared a special dinner and asked him, quote, the man, who until that moment had been very present and affectionate, became visibly uncomfortable. He told her he needed time to think, and from that night onward, the magic shattered. He began distancing himself until the relationship faded away. Months later, Laura discovered he'd started a serious relationship with another woman. She was devastated. What she didn't understand is that her question didn't create doubt in him. It simply activated his panic about a decision he didn't feel prepared for in that moment and under that pressure. If you've ever felt that wall when asking, write "wall" in the comments. Now you might be thinking, but if I don't ask, how will I ever get the clarity I need? This brings us to the second revelation, the principle that changes everything. Men don't commit to what they find, they commit to what they build. This is the law of future investment, and it's wired into masculine psychology. A man's emotional attachment isn't primarily determined by what you give him or how perfect you are for him. It's determined by what he has invested in you, by the effort, time, vulnerability, and energy he has poured into the connection. When he has fought for something, when he has overcome obstacles to reach it, when he has sacrificed other options to choose it, that's when his brain assigns it immense value. It's a psychological mechanism that exists in all areas of life. We value what costs us something, what we've had to work for. Think about it this way. A man who receives everything easily, whose relationship with you requires no effort on his part, who never has to wonder if you'll be there tomorrow, because you always are, unconditionally, has no psychological reason to commit. Why would he? He already has access to all the benefits of the relationship without any of the responsibilities of commitment. But when you create a dynamic where he has to invest, where he has to pursue, where he has to prove himself worthy of your time and attention, you're activating his hunter instinct and simultaneously creating the psychological bond that makes commitment feel not like a sacrifice, but like claiming a prize he's earned. Consider the case of a man we'll call Carlos. He dated two women in different periods of his life. The first woman, Maria, was always available, always agreeable, always waiting for his call. Carlos liked her, but he never felt the urgency to commit. Why would he? She'd already made it clear he was her priority. There was no challenge, no mystery, no need for him to invest effort. The relationship drifted for a year until Carlos ended it with the classic line, "I'm not ready for anything serious." 6 months later, Carlos met Isabel. Isabel was different. She had her own life, her own passions, her own schedule. When Carlos asked her out, sometimes she said yes, sometimes she had other plans. She didn't rearrange her world to accommodate him. She made him work to earn her time. She challenged his ideas, she had boundaries, she wasn't impressed by his usual tactics. And something fascinating happened. For the first time in his life, Carlos found himself pursuing. He was texting more, planning more thoughtful dates, opening up emotionally in ways he'd never done before. He was investing, and with each investment, his emotional attachment deepened. 4 months later, it was Carlos who initiated the commitment conversation. He didn't want to risk losing Isabel because, in his mind, she had become valuable precisely because she'd required him to fight for her. The lesson here is powerful. Stop making it too easy. I'm not suggesting you play games or be cruel. I'm suggesting you have a life so full, standards so clear, and self-respect so solid that a man has to step up to earn a place in your world. When you do this, when you create space for him to invest, you're not manipulating him. You're giving him the opportunity to build his own attachment through his own efforts. And that attachment, born from his investment, is the foundation upon which genuine commitment is built. If you're ready to stop giving everything and start inspiring investment, write investment in the comments. So, how do you practically inspire this investment without seeming cold or uninterested? This brings us to the third revelation, the effect of strategic absence. I call it the void principle. Human psychology operates on a simple truth. We don't value what's always available. Constant presence, while it may seem loving, often creates the opposite of the effect you desire. It makes you invisible, taken for granted, background noise in his life. But when you create intentional space, when you're not always there, when there are moments when he reaches for you and finds empty air, something shifts in his brain. The void you create becomes a space he feels compelled to fill. Think of it this way. Imagine you have unlimited access to your favorite food. It's always in your pantry, always fresh, always available. How often do you crave it? Probably not much because there's no scarcity, no urgency. But now imagine that food is only available occasionally, that you have to make an effort to get it, that sometimes when you want it, it's not there. Suddenly, it becomes more desirable. You think about it more. You plan for it. You value it when you have it. This is not about manipulation. It's about understanding human nature. Men, particularly, are wired to pursue what moves away and to take for granted what stands still. When you're always available, always responsive, always accommodating, you become part of his landscape, not an object of his pursuit. The strategic absence I'm describing isn't about playing hard to get or ignoring him. It's about genuinely having a life so rich and fulfilling that you're not always accessible because you're busy living. It's about having passions, friendships, projects, and goals that occupy your time and attention. When you do this, two powerful things happen. First, he starts to miss you. The spaces when you're not there become opportunities for him to realize how much he enjoys your presence. Second, he starts to pursue. His masculine energy, which thrives on the chase, activates. He begins to wonder what you're doing, who you're with, whether you're thinking about him. And in that wondering, in that pursuit, he invests energy. And as we know, investment creates attachment. I knew a woman named Carmen. She was in a relationship that felt one-sided. She was always the one reaching out, always the one making plans, always available whenever he called. The relationship felt stagnant, and he showed no signs of wanting to deepen the commitment. A friend advised her to pull back, not out of spite, but to refocus on her own life. Carmen started saying no to last-minute plans. She rekindled old friendships, took up painting, started a fitness routine. She wasn't playing games. She was genuinely reclaiming her life. And something remarkable happened. Within weeks, his behavior changed. He started initiating contact more. He started making actual plans in advance, because he realized he couldn't just assume she'd be available. He started asking about her day, her interests, her art. For the first time, he was pursuing, and in that pursuit, he was investing. 2 months later, he told her he wanted to make the relationship official, because, in his words, he realized he didn't want to risk losing her to someone else. The void she created by having her own life is what made him value the time he had with her. This is your task now. Create intentional space, not as a manipulation tactic, but as an act of self-love. Fill your life with things that matter to you. Have nights when you're unavailable because you're with friends, pursuing your passion, growing yourself. Let him experience the void of your absence so he can truly appreciate the gift of your presence. Because a man doesn't commit to constant availability. He commits to the woman he fears losing, and he can't fear losing you if you're always there. And now that you understand how to inspire his investment through strategic space, you're ready for the fourth revelation. Men don't commit to the woman who needs them most. They commit to the woman who provides what they can't find anywhere else. This is the secret of becoming his sanctuary. In a world that constantly demands performance from men, that judges them, competes with them, and challenges their worth, a woman who becomes a sanctuary of peace, acceptance, and restoration becomes irreplaceable. Let me be clear. Being his sanctuary doesn't mean being his doormat. It doesn't mean tolerating bad behavior or suppressing your own needs. It means creating an emotional environment where he can be vulnerable, where he feels accepted, where his masculine energy is appreciated rather than attacked. Most men spend their days in competition. At work, they're measured by performance. In their social circles, there's often unspoken competition. Even in many modern relationships, they feel they're being tested, compared, or criticized. This creates what I call battle fatigue. They're tired, not physically necessarily, but emotionally and psychologically exhausted from constantly having to prove themselves. When a man encounters a woman who sees his efforts, appreciates his intentions even when he stumbles, and creates a space where he doesn't have to defend himself, something profound happens. She becomes the place he wants to return to. Not because she's perfect, but because she offers something he can't find elsewhere. Peace. Think about the difference between two women. The first woman criticizes often. When he's late, she makes him feel guilty. When he forgets something, she reminds him of all the times he's failed. When he shares an idea, she points out the flaws. She may do this from a place of wanting better for him, but the effect is that being around her feels like another battlefield. The second woman operates differently. When he's late, she assumes good intent and mentions it calmly. When he forgets something, she addresses the specific instance without dragging up the past. When he shares an idea, she finds what's valuable in it before offering perspective. Being around her feels safe. He can breathe. He can be human. Which woman do you think he'll want to commit to? The one who adds to his stress, or the one who offers refuge from it? I'll share the story of a man named Diego. He was dating two women casually, trying to decide which relationship to pursue seriously. The first woman, Anna, was beautiful and intelligent, but being with her felt exhausting. She had opinions about how he should dress, what job he should pursue, how he should spend his time. She meant well, but every interaction felt like a critique. The second woman, Rosa, was equally beautiful and intelligent, but being with her felt different. She listened more than she lectured. She appreciated his efforts even when things didn't go perfectly. She created an atmosphere where he felt he could be himself without judgment. When Diego had a bad day, Anna would tell him what he should have done differently. Rosa would simply hold space for him to process. The choice became obvious. Diego committed to Rosa, not because she was more beautiful or more intelligent, but because she offered something Anna didn't, a sanctuary. With Rosa, he didn't have to be perfect. He could just be, and that feeling of acceptance became something he couldn't imagine living without. This is your invitation. Become a sanctuary. Notice and appreciate his efforts, even the small ones. When conflict arises, address the issue without attacking his character. Create moments of peace and joy that he associates with your presence. Make being with you feel like coming home after a long journey. Because when you do this, when you become the source of the peace he craves, commitment stops being a decision he has to make and becomes a necessity he can't ignore. He won't want to lose access to the one place where he feels truly at ease. If you're ready to become his sanctuary, write "sanctuary" in the comments. And now we arrive at the most powerful revelation of all. This is the perspective shift that changes everything. The great turn. Until now, we've talked about what you can do to inspire his investment and become his peace. But this final piece is about shifting the entire dynamic so that he moves from evaluating whether he wants to commit to you to fearing the possibility of a future without you. This is about making him confront what I call the emptiness vision. Here's what most women don't understand. When you're constantly present, constantly available, constantly making it clear that he's your priority, his brain never has to imagine a future without you. Why would it? You've made it abundantly clear through your actions that you're not going anywhere. There's no urgency, no fear of loss, no motivation to act. But when you shift your energy, when you become the queen of your own life rather than the subject of his, something powerful happens in his mind. He starts to observe you differently. He sees you living fully, pursuing your goals, radiating joy that doesn't depend on him. And his brain, which is wired to project into the future, begins a calculation. He imagines his own future, and then he imagines your future, and he realizes something alarming. Your future looks incredibly bright and full of possibilities, while his, without the light of your sanctuary, without the challenge of your world, suddenly seems a bit dimmer, lonelier, more mundane. You're not telling him this. It's a conclusion he reaches on his own, in the silence of his own thoughts. It's the moment he realizes you're not just a girlfriend, you're an asset. You're the companion who inspires him, who gives him peace, who challenges him to be better. And the idea of losing that asset, of watching another man perhaps join your incredible journey while he's left behind, becomes a far more powerful motivator than any conversation about where we're going. The fear of losing the opportunity for an extraordinary future with you is what finally kills his doubt. Imagine the story of a man we'll call Andres. He'd been casually seeing a woman we'll call Sophia for months. Sophia was incredible, but Andres hesitated. He was afraid of commitment. One day, without saying anything to him, Sophia accepted a temporary job offer in another city for 3 months. It wasn't an ultimatum, It was an amazing opportunity for her career that she decided not to reject for him. During those first weeks of separation, Andres found himself forced to imagine his life without Sophia's constant presence, and the vision terrified him. He realized it wasn't freedom he wanted. He wanted her laughter, her calm, her intelligence. He realized his future without her was simply worse. When Sophia returned, she didn't find a hesitant man. She found a man who had a ring in his pocket. Sophia's absence wasn't manipulation. It was a demonstration of her own value and her commitment to her own life. And it was that demonstration that gave Andres the vision of a future without her that he needed to make a decision. You don't have to move to another city. You just have to live your life with such fullness, with such commitment to your own growth, that he understands at a visceral level that you're a comet on an ascending trajectory, and that either he boards now or he risks spending the rest of his life watching your trail from a distance. Stop trying to sell him a future with you. Focus on building a present so magnificent for yourself that the idea of not being part of your future becomes his greatest fear. Because a man doesn't commit when you ask him to. He commits when he himself reaches the conclusion that not committing is simply the worst deal of his life. And now that you know how to make him see the future, you're ready for the final act. In the next point, we'll see how this new energy naturally leads him to be the one who initiates the conversation about commitment. We've reached the end of the transformation process. You've traveled the path of inner transformation. You've stopped being the woman who pressures for a future and have become the embodiment of a present so powerful that he can't help but want to be part of your tomorrow. And now we observe the culmination, the moment when all your sovereign energy materializes into the action you once longed for, but now no longer need desperately. It's the moment when he, moved by his own internal revelation, transitions from doubt to devotion, and sometimes even to pleading. When a man has invested his time, his effort, and his vulnerability in you, when he's experienced your presence as a sanctuary of peace, and when he's been confronted with the terrifying vision of a future without your light, he reaches a tipping point. The internal scale that was weighing freedom versus commitment tilts decisively. He realizes that true commitment isn't a loss of his freedom, but the only way to secure permanent access to the greatest asset of his life, you. And it's then that the fear of the label disappears, replaced by a much greater fear, the fear that another, more decisive man will recognize the treasure he's been hesitating to claim. And this is where his behavior changes visibly. The man who was previously ambiguous suddenly starts seeking clarity. He's the one who starts using the word we. He's the one who starts making plans that extend beyond next weekend. He's the one who introduces you to his inner circle, not as a friend, but with a pride that reveals his intentions. And finally, he's the one who, in one way or another, initiates the conversation. And when he does, it's no longer the tense conversation you previously tried to force. It's a conversation born from his own need for security. Imagine the culmination of the story of Marcos and Isabel, the woman who was her own universe. After months of investing in her, of admiring her independence, and of feeling the peace of her sanctuary, Marcos began to feel panic. He realized that although they spent incredible time together, there was no guarantee. Isabel had never pressed for a title, and it was precisely that absence of pressure that terrified him. One day, it was he who, with a nervous voice she'd never heard from him, said, quote, 3. In that moment, the dynamic had completely reversed. He wasn't yielding to a demand from her. He was pleading from a place of vulnerability and genuine desire for the security of a commitment. And he did it not because she manipulated him, but because her queenly energy, her self-sufficiency, showed him that she was a privilege, not an option. This is the final secret. A man's commitment isn't earned through demands. It's inspired by the example of your own commitment to yourself. When you stop doubting your own value, he stops doubting yours. When you radically commit to your own happiness, he'll feel an irrepressible desire to commit to the source of that magnetic energy. So stop seeking commitment. Seek your own sovereignty. Become the woman with whom a future is so evidently better that not asking for commitment feels to him like an act of self-sabotage. And then you won't have to ask. You'll only have to decide whether to accept the proposal from the man who has finally understood that true freedom isn't being alone, but being beside a queen. And so, my dear soul, we've reached the end of our journey. to the heart of the secret that transforms a man's doubt into devotion. Today you've learned that the path to serious commitment isn't a battle of words or a negotiation of terms. It's a silent transformation that occurs within you. We've dismantled together the masculine allergy to commitment, understanding that it's born from pressure, not from fear of love. You've received the fundamental principle of future investment, the certainty that he only commits to what he's already invested his soul in. You have in your hands the tools of the void effect and peace anchoring, the keys to inspiring his investment. And you've witnessed the great perspective shift, how by building your own universe, he's forced to confront the terrifying vision of a future without you. Finally, you've seen how all this transformation naturally leads him from doubt to pleading, to being the one who asks, who seeks, who longs for the security of your commitment. The woman who inspires serious commitment isn't the one who argues best, but the one who lives most fully. She's not the one who demands most, but the one who values herself most. She understands that a man doesn't give his future to the woman who needs him to be happy, but to the woman who shows him what happiness so radiant looks like, that he can't imagine a future without her. Stop worrying about defining the relationship. Focus on defining yourself, your passions, your boundaries, your peace. Build a life so beautiful that commitment with a man stops being your primary goal and becomes just one option, because it's at that precise instant when you stop needing him that you become absolutely indispensable. And the right man won't flee from your greatness. He'll want to be the king of your kingdom. If today you recognize that you are the prize, write, "I am the prize" in the comments.